So today we're going to talk about the top-down versus bottom-up approach that you can use in marketing. And here we are talking about the art and science of marketing, because marketing is a mixture of both. Ideally, there's a lot of data and analytical stuff, but it is not completely science when, X plus Y equals Z all the time. There is an art to it as well. You're dealing with psychology and people. So I'm going to talk about the two different approaches of how you can create a value proposition, the pros and cons of each. I am actually going to show you later both of these options, but I want you to be aware of both of them and see which suits best for you. All right. So this is it, the top-down versus bottom-up approach. So at the bottom, you see a triangle, and at the lowest level of the triangle is the lowest level, where you have all the details and all the data and anything you want analytically available to you. And at the high level is the opposite. It's more conceptual, there's less data available, and in between is sort of between high and low level. Bottom-up approach is effectively starting from the bottom at the lowest level of detail with data and numbers and statistics and everything you can find. And the top-down approach is starting from the opposite, more high-level overview type concepts, but I'll explain more in detail. So in working with data, figures, targets, and ultimately customer value proposition or CVP development, there are two approaches that can be used, the top-down versus the bottom-up. With all approaches, there are pros and cons to each method. The bottom-up method, so working at the bottom of the triangle and working upwards, works with actual data from the market, from studies, reports, statistics, to build a bigger picture of what is happening. In this view, you start at the bottom of the pyramid. You get all the details you can, and you work methodically and mathematically up to higher levels of the picture until you can build the high level overview based on the underlying data. So the high level overview in this approach emerges from all of the underlying data and analysis. Top down comes from the other end. It may be using more heuristics. So heuristics is a word meaning proxies for things. Proxies is a word meaning approximations. So sometimes it can be a gut feeling or even estimations or worst case guesses. But it's definitely more qualitative. So quantitative is based on numbers. Qualitative is based on more words and concepts, based on experiences, and can be more, in inverted commas, directionally accurate, which is a word you hear in the corporate world a lot. Is something, it doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to have every single number and dotted and I's dotted and T's crossed, etc. If it's directionally accurate, it's good enough to get you going in the right direction. Let's use it to keep going in the right direction. If you value speed and implementation over endless analysis. The opposite is you potentially get stuck in what's called analysis paralysis. You always need more and more data to get an answer to everything. So there's sometimes a balance to be struck between these two things. So the top down comes from that side. It can be more qualitative, based on experience and based on things that are more directionally accurate. Once the high level is clear, it then works downwards to verify or find the areas to support the high level assumptions. So you can start with assumptions at the high level, but then you don't want to go to the market and implement assumptions. Assumptions in many cases can be valid because they're based on experience. So if you and your teams have great experience in the market with your products and services and customers, you have a lot of assumptions that what will work and what won't already, and you can use those as a starting point. So you can build up your plan, but then as you go into the market and test things and you look and find data that supports this or disproves it equally. You need to stay open to it. So it works downwards to verify or find the areas to support the high levels assumptions. And if it doesn't support it, then obviously you need to pivot and change, find new assumptions and start the process again. So that's broadly at the bottom up versus the top down approach. Look at it in a bit more detail here with some examples of what we're talking about. So let's look at example number 1. I want to know the number of cars in the United Kingdom, the number of motor vehicles, as I have a product, in this example, air fresheners, that I want to sell into cars. So one air freshener that hangs over the rearview mirror or hangs somewhere in the car, little Christmas trees or little scented things you tear open, you hang it in the car. Generally you use one of those products per car. So I want to know how big is my market, because my market is cars, it's the number of cars. So the bottom-up approach would be, I go into the market and I find and I get and I pay for the data, wherever it comes from, for all active car registrations. So somewhere there is a database of every active car, and you want active cars because cars that are not on the road are not being used, and therefore they're not going to have air fresheners in them. If there's a car that's not working or somebody's doing up as a classic car on their driveway for 5 years, it doesn't have an air freshener inside it. So you want active cars that are actually being used. So there's a database that exists out there somewhere. It might be the motor vehicle registration agency, it might be the licensing agency from the government, and if they sell that data or make it available, or if they don't in some countries and some markets, there will be other companies that have this data for lots of reasons, because there are a ton of products that get sold into cars or motor vehicles. You know, you can tires, maps, sunshades, motor oil, all these kind of parts. It's a very, very big market, all the things that go into cars. So this data exists, you know that. So you go out, you find it, you get it. Sometimes you have to pay for it. It might be a market research company that has done this in some way that's statistically valid. But you find it and you've got it. So you have the actual number of all the cars. And then that could be broken down by region, by car type, whatever. But you have the physical number. Say it's 20 million. It's the actual number. And you know that's true because it's linked to licensing or registrations. That's the bottom-up approach. Lots of quantitative. You have the actual data and numbers. A top-down approach might be, we don't have time to find the data, who has it. We don't have the budget to pay for it if people are selling it. And we need speed. We need to get an answer on this in the next couple of days. So you brainstorm with your team. A top-down approach might look like, you find out how many households there are in the UK or in the country you're in. And this is much more freely available than car data. So you can find it from the internet, census. Most newspapers, for example, when a country does a census of how many people and how many households are in the country, that is published. So that is an easy internet search, even if you can't get the actual census data itself. You find out from how many households are in the country. You make an assumption. Okay, we're a relatively wealthy country. Both parents work, as most couples work in the household. So to get to work, we have 1.5 cars on average. Not every household has 2 cars. There's also obviously, you need to factor in how many people are children, retired, how many working people. So even though there's on average 2 people in a household, that doesn't mean there's 2 cars per household. So there's less, but also most people work as couples. So you can make an assumption, there's 1.5 cars per household, and you multiply 1.5 times the number of households, gives you the number of cars. And then like that, you have an answer in a day. and even in an hour from a top-down type approach. Let's look at a second example. I want to set growth targets for next year for my product of 10%. I want to grow my sales by 10%. A bottom-up approach would be you get sales of all similar products in the market, plus the growth rates for your products, your category, how much the category is growing, the spend in the category. You match the growth rate or exceed it based on what is in your plans. You verify if 10% is realistic. Otherwise, you develop plans to steal shares from competitors to get the 10%. So basically, you're trying to find out what is the market demand. Let's use the simple example of the cars again. You can find out the car sales growth rate, and if that is 10%, great. If it's higher than 10%, you can get 10%. But if the actual total number of cars being sold is 3% and you have a target of 10%, you're not going to get that growth rate just by selling new cars because the demand in the market isn't there. So for you to sell 10%, you have to steal the balance from share from your competitors. You have to take those sales from competitors, win them instead of your competitors. So that's the basic gist of it. But you look at the market data. What is the actual demand in the market? How much is being sold, and therefore how much are customers buying, and therefore is my target of 10% realistic? That is a bottom-up approach, and then you adjust accordingly. Either the target is not realistic, so you have to take it up or down, or it's a stretch, but you have to do other things. You can't just rely on the natural growth and the natural sales in the market to hit that target. You've got to take from competitors, or look at buying a competitor, or doing something different. That's a bottom-up approach. A top-down approach is that the boss or the corporate head office says next year's target is 10% higher than last year's target, which is 60-40, mostly what happens in businesses. Okay, we want to grow next year, we want to grow 10% more than we did last year. Then you have to go and find the segments and activities in the lower levels that will deliver this. So you have the target, it's 10%. Go and find the lower level of detail where it's going to come from. So that's from a top-down approach, but the number's fixed at the beginning. The 10%'s not going to change. You have to go and find, which will take time. You've got to go into the market, find the lower level, find where it's going to come from. And then if it doesn't exist, you have to go back up and have the conversation of why, but that will take longer. So that's two examples of a top-down versus bottom-up approach in sales, in target setting, and generally you see both of these approaches used in most businesses. So, when should you use which approach with customer value proposition development? On the left, let's look at the bottom-up approach first. So the bottom-up approach should be used when you have time, budget, resources, and access to the data you need to build up a comprehensive market picture and model. So many companies you build a demand model. What is the sales broken down by product or category, by region in the market for this year and next year, and what's the growth rate, the compound annual growth rate over time. If it's growing at 2%, you can model 10 years into the future. So you know exactly how large the market demand is, and then you can work out how much of that you can realistically get and make plans around it. So you have time, budget, resources, and access to all the data, and you build a model, a comprehensive picture of the market. Also, when the high-level strategy and brand vision is less worked out, it's diffuse, fragmented, or so generic to be useless, that you need to build it up based on your segments and customers. So remember I said earlier, if you work bottom up, the high level overview sort of arises, it emerges out of the data. So if your high level strategy, vision and all of that kind of stuff is just very vague, as a lot of companies are, that you're better off working just with the data, because you can figure out how big is the market, how big are the segments, where do I need to go, because the high level strategy is too vague to be useful. It's not directing me strongly enough. And the bottom up is also useful when you have multiple products in the market and you want to consolidate into a few customer value propositions. Again, you can use data to do this. So that's the bottom up. The top down is more used when you are under time pressure and you don't have the resources, which could be people or money, and access to the data to build a full model of the market. You don't have the time, you don't have the people, you don't have the money. And the organization wants speed. We need to make a decision, we need to make plans, we need to, it's November, the new year is starting in January, we need to get execution happening from January. We don't still want to be talking about next year's plans in January and February. So the organization wants speed. This often happens. And you can also use the top down when the high level strategy and brand vision of the company is all worked out and it's super clear, and you just need to translate this into new product propositions. Because if they've done the strategy and brand vision correctly, it would have been done based on market data and customers and segments and customer needs. So that's all in the background. And then you're just looking to, where am I executing that? So that it's helpful, because you're just taking that and you're looking to implement it faster. So that's top down. You're under time pressure, you don't have resources, you want speed, and everything else is already pretty clear of what the organization is doing and why. There's a final point about this, which is people's analytical approaches. So when you look at how people use and absorb information and how they use information, there's also a lot of really good work around personality types, Myers-Briggs type, things about how people use data. Some of the other really good personality profiling is insights discovery. Also the DISC format is quite good, and there's other ones that are relatively cheap and free. But the reason I'm talking about these is that some people naturally are data driven and numbers driven, and they need data to make decisions. And other people are more like high level, I've got a feeling we need to go in this direction, or just give me just enough data to make a decision and then we go. I prefer action and speed over lots of analysis. There's some cultural elements in this too. There's the classic cliche about if you work with Germans, there are lots of data and analysis and they always need more data to make decisions. Some of that's true. Again, not everyone, different personalities and all this type of stuff. So if you are a person that you like budgeting and you like working with data and you need numbers to inform your decision, you're going to tend towards the bottom up. And if you are a person that's like, I naturally know, I absorb enough information about the market from reading and working with customers, and I kind of know this is where we need to go, and I kind of know instinctively this is what we need to do. Again, both approaches work. You just need to know where you sit on the scale and where the rest of your team sits on the scale. If you are a very bottom up data driven person and you are dealing with a boss or a CEO who's very top down, you're going to clash. So you need to use this triangle to work out, well, where do we meet in the middle, where you have enough data that you're comfortable and they have enough sort of assurity that what they know is true to make a decision, and you kind of meet both ways. And but it could be the opposite. It could be you running your business as a sort of top down person, and then you hire a marketing person or a data person, or you're working with finance. Finance tend to be very bottom up people. Everything is numbers. So just factor in again when you use this approach, where do you sit? Are you predominantly on the left or are you on the right? It's not that you are 100% either or. Don't forget, with styles of working, people can be multiple ways. You tend to have a preference. So is your preference, and you can work on both, is your preference on the left, bottom up, or is your preference on the right to work top down? And then just be aware of that in a project or when you're trying to do things, of where the other team members sit. And here's the conclusion in the red at the bottom. In reality, both approaches can work equally well. Neither one is better. I think from my experience, bottom up tends to be used more, probably 60 to 70% if you have time, budget and people, because it's numbers driven. So when you're asking for budgets or presenting for investment or presenting anything, people eventually always ask, what's this based on? Where's the numbers? If you have the numbers, great. But again, smaller businesses and businesses trying to be agile tend to be more top down. It's like, fail fast, learn quickly, progress over perfection, all of that kind of stuff. If you value speed and agility and execution in the market, the organization tends to be more top down. So in reality, both approaches can work equally well, which is why I'm going to show both of them to you. I'm going to show the bottom-up approach first to create a value proposition, and then I'm going to show you a top-down example where the bottom-up can take quite a while, depending on how much data you need to make the CVP. And the top-down, I will show you an example where I did this with a company in like 3 weeks with brainstorming with some customers, and we end-to-end we created a value proposition in 3 weeks. So our advice is to pick the approach that most describes your situation based on the above. Bottom up, those criteria. Top down, those criteria. Wherever you fit, on the left or the right, start with that one, because that is, you will actually go faster if one of these is your natural home. And if you really want to do well, another option is to use both methods to then see how much they align. In a perfect world, this is what we would do with all of these. We would do the bottom-up approach, and then separately we would run the top-down approach and see where they align and meet in the middle. Align them as much as possible for a final version, and then you've got the best of both worlds. You have data-driven analysis, and you have experience and heuristics of being in the market, and these things come together into the best of both worlds. And this is the point. This is why I called it the art and science of marketing. So remember, marketing is an art as well as a science. So it's a science because there is lots of numbers and data, but it's an art because you're dealing with people, perceptions, personalities, wants and needs, decision making. This is all very complex in us humans. However, the final thing would be to say that whichever approach you use, as long as you are testing your output with customers, you will seldom go wrong. Either approach, develop it to a certain point, and then go and test it with customers in a simple way. Go and ask them. If you already have customers you have good relationships with, go and ask them. The other way market research companies do this, that you can also do it, is you get focus groups together. You invite 5 or 6 people to a meeting room or a nice office or even a hotel, give them snacks and drinks, and you show them boards. Does this appeal to you? Why not? Would you buy this? Why not? And then you refine from there. As long as you're testing with customers and refining, you will seldom go wrong because the customer gives the final input. So that's it. Bottom up, top down, pick which one is right for you based on where you are today. I will show you both approaches in the coming modules. Pick which one you want to do first and then test it with customers. And if you have the time, try both. You might find one works better for your personality, your company's culture, and then you can always do both and see how they meet in the middle to get best of both worlds. So it's really, really robust. It has the data and it has the experience, and you have a fantastic meeting in the middle to create a really great CVP. So that's it.